there is intelligence in the root. That's something I heard whispered in my head this morning. I just walked past the oak tree that I remember last year had fallen down catastrophically. We all heard the sound, we heard the crack of the tree as it came down, and it was quite a spectacle. They chopped it back to the root, to the stump, and this year there are shoots kind of shooting up to the sky. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing that new life is coming from a stump. And I was thinking, well, all that matters there is that the root is still in the ground. And something we know about trees is that it's kind of like it doesn't matter what happens to the top bit. It's the stump and the root system that provides new life, new growth. The problem with that tree, it was leaning over the lake a little bit. It had a lean to it, and it's a heavy weight to have a lean on it. And I just inquired, did a bit of research to find out if that lean is inherent within the root system now, because it's fell towards the lean. So we've got the root now kind of out of the ground, if you know what I mean. And I'm thinking, well, if that's the state of the root system, it's just angled towards the lake now, isn't it going to be a bit of a dangerous operation to grow new branches? But there's an intelligence in the root system that when those new shoots start going up to the sky, every little breeze that those shoots feel are like signals that get interpreted by the root system as to where they need to put new roots down. It interprets the direction. So it's almost like the old root system. It doesn't matter where the angle of it is. It's starting again from an intelligence that's incredible. It's the root that has the intelligence that feeds the above ground life. And in a way, the root adjusts to whatever's going on above ground. And that's why we have such a faithful reproduction of life, no matter what happens to the tree above ground. It was just kind of making me think of yesterday when we were talking about the Torah portion, Deut Canaan, where Moses is pleading that he can go in to the promised land, and Numbers 3-7. And we were talking about the idea of a multi-generational reality to Israel. And as we were exploring in our group yesterday, I started seeing this three-dimensional communication system going on. And let me explain.
Sounds really technical.
But it's the best way I could describe it as at the moment, and you'll understand why in a sec. So we've got God and man, okay, the vertical relationship. Then we had the horizontal. So it's love God, love your neighbour as yourself. That's 2 dimensions. But I saw into a 3rd dimension, and that is a multi-generational reality where relationship and communication go in a multi-generational way. So if you just think of that, you have a relationship with God. That's a vertical relationship, and there's the back and forth conversation going on, maybe. We pick up things from God for our lives. We give him praise. You know, that kind of 2-way flow is, we talk about the life of God becoming a current, and the potential within the voltage becomes actual current as it starts flowing with a relationship. And that's where creation can start to form actual relational stuff, actual character stuff, because that's the essence of God. So all that to say, a relationship with God is going to start a current and a currency, because currency is, you value your relationship with God. He values you. You've got currency there. And then you have it horizontally with each other. As we have a relationship with each other, there's a current going on there. And that kind of whole load of scriptures start lighting up for me there, to do with love your neighbour as yourself, and what that actually looks like in terms of carrying burdens, confession towards each other, being real, really. And within that being real, that's the circuitry by which the current flows. That's why often in community, we can have a difficult time. We hate each other. We rub each other up the wrong way, you know. We're all being formed into an image and likeness, and as the current flows, it's actually the resistance that causes the light to happen. I think we need to be aware of that as we interact with each other and get annoyed with each other. It's how it's meant to be, folks. That's the nature of the circuit. Same relationally with God and in the vertical relationship. It's similar kind of dynamic. But then we have the multigenerational, and that's where it gets interesting. I was noticing in Deuteronomy 6, it talks about this mitzvah. It's at the end of the chapter. Earlier on in the chapter, it talks about doing the commandments so that you're going to live, you're going to prosper. Then what's going to happen one day is your son is going to come up and ask, what is all this about? What's all these mitzvot? What are we doing here? And that's when you put this like a trigger moment. This is when you really basically sit down with your son. He's got to the age where he's asking questions that really matter. And you explain to him the history of where you are now. You rewind all the way back to Egypt. This is because we were delivered from Egypt. That's my paraphrasing. And then afterwards it says, do the mitzvah. All the mitzvahs you're going to do are going to cause curiosity to rise up in your children. What is this about? Like, identity is formed really through mitzvot and through a certain peculiar, holy, set-apart way of living that is going to be different from the nations. And the differentness is going to spark the question, which is going to be answered by the history. And that's going to be called, in my interpretation of this chapter, the commandment. Can you see the dynamic there? I'm maybe not going to speak into it anymore.
Let me just reiterate. So we have lots of commandments. This is me putting it together in my head. We have lots of commandments, and we have a life that is lived in the land because you are keeping all these commandments. And then your son's going to come to you one day and say, well, what's all this commandment stuff? What's this about? And that's the moment when you sit your child down and say, this is our history. This is you. This is your root. We're coming back to the roots, aren't we?
Yes, yeah, good link.
It's the roots that is the beginning of all this. And then that somehow becomes the one mitzvah. So it seems like to me, you're saying the one mitzvah is to talk with your next generation within context of the question that rises up from his mind, from his heart, regarding all the mitzvahs that he is experiencing and the life he is experiencing in the land, or maybe even out of the land. Maybe we can turn it on its head and say, well, why are we in exile? I think that kind of lines up with some of the scriptures.
More scriptures lighting up, yeah. I think later on in Deuteronomy, it's a bit like the prodigal son imagery. It's like, what am I doing here, feeding pigs with no money, eating the pig food, and when I've got a house full of everything I need and a father who loves me? And that's when he turns around and goes back. And yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's become a mitzvah, that dynamic. I see why it's difficult to put it into actual words, because it's quite a lot to see.
Yeah, as I said, with seeing into a higher dimensional reality of mitzvot, becoming mitzvah.
We are thinking multigenerationally. We're thinking in a higher dimension. There's a film, Interstellar, where these beings from the future trying to communicate back to us. They have become aware in 5-dimensional reality. They've been able to evolve into that kind of way of seeing things. And it's just made me think of it's like, how can I explain a 3 dimensions reality to a 2-dimensional flat man?
Yeah, that's actually fundamental. So I just want to go to chapter 7. There's these 7 nations. And then it says about your son again. So I see this almost as a chiasm. I'm not saying it's a chiasm. I'm just seeing this as a kind of chiasm-like event, where on one side you've reached the point where you have a mitzvah. that has borne out of the questions that your son has regarding all the mitzvahs you're doing. The lifestyle he's encountering and starting to ask questions about. Then turn the chapter, we're still in the center of the chiasm-like structure, and we have the 7 nations that we are to conquer. And it's like saying to me, that's the way you conquer these 7 nations. Multigenerationally, maybe. That you make sure that you are making questions rise up in your child based on the lifestyle, based on the study of Torah, that hopefully multi-generation that you are still doing and they are still encountering. I mean, that's an idealism because the reality, as we've seen, is far from that. And that's what exile is for.
I love the fact that exile is so merciful. It's like you're not getting out of this. You are going to learn these deep lessons because to become what I want you to become is the best thing for you. And because you're my child, the discipline looks like exile at these times when you're not going to choose life. You know, I've told you to choose life, but hey, how often do we not listen to the advice of our mentors, our parents?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it is mercy, exile. So we had the 7 nations, and then we had the son again. So it's like, in context of these 7 nations, it says to strike down all of them, and then make no covenant with them, and then show no mercy to them, and then don't intermarry with them. And then it talks about getting rid of the gods of them. Tear down their altars, smash their pillars, because you are a holy people from all the peoples on the face of the earth, and God has chosen you to be his segular, his treasured possession. So there's something of a polarity going on here. In the previous chapter 6, we've had do the mitzvahs, do. Become an identity. Let something form around the scaffolding that these mitzvot are providing you a framework to build into. And to be honest, the life of the commandments enables it, does the building. Because God is life, you know, the flow, the breath of life living by his words turns on the currents of God's life in you vertically and horizontally, communally, is just going to happen if you live out these commands. So that's one polarity of it. And then you turn over the chapter to what you take down, how you deal with these 7 squatters in your house. And we have to be combat ready. It's very difficult. And just as sometimes it's difficult to put into practice the mitzvot, the specific life direction that is going to create a nurturing environment for what God is growing. When we turn the page, we find out basically we are meant to be ruthless with those things in maybe our lives that are not formed in the character of God, but are residing in the placement, the environment that God wants you to rest in. So I'm seeing it in terms of psychological parts within us that they think they are living in paradise. And yes, maybe they are. Maybe the land is paradise, but it's it's a contorted essence. So within us, that looks like I feel safe, but the only reason why I feel safe is because I am operating in survival mode and not having close relationships. You know, that kind of dynamic.
Oh, I see. So you're seeing the 7 nations in there as kind of 7 or complete or perfect anti-dwellers, as it were, in the place that God has for you to dwell, the real you.
That's really, I love where you've put that. Yeah, exactly. Anti-dwellers. Yeah, wow. So yeah, these things within us that we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel accepted, we feel confident. But the way that is becoming a reality for me is through a contortion. I'm saying contortion on purpose because that's what happened in the Garden of Eden. There's a Hebrew word there that describes them being in this contorted state. It's crippled state, really. And yes, I mean, we see it many times in people who can be really badly bent out of shape, crippled. I was bent out of shape for a year, like almost a year, with my back. It's literally, it's pretty horrific. But I still lived. And when I didn't have the pain, I just dealt with the fact that I'm leaning to the left quite a bit. I can't do anything about it. But that's not how we're designed to be. So really, in summary, there's a twofold process that we are to build into the future multi-generationally. You know, Deuteronomy chapter 6, doing, and chapter 7, taking down. Doing, constructing a life that forms from keeping these mitzvot, these commandments, but also taking down. It's where we enter into combat with a life that was formed by a lie. These things that we think are life within us, but actually they're not. They're a life force that has formed really from survival, from grasping, as we spoke of in that conversation we had, saddling the shadow, loving God with both of your hearts, your good inclination, but also your Yetzer hara, your evil inclination, or let's call it your not good inclination, that deviates away from truth. Your drives, and having difficult conversations with that part of you when you see it. You know, seeing the anti-dwellers, and I'm using actually the Greek idea of anti. We talked about that in our wake up and smell the coffee conversation. When we're talking about Antichrist, it's not anti. The word really means instead of Christ.
And 2 Corinthians 10 verse 4 is coming to mind. I've just got it here. Tearing down false arguments and every high-minded thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God.
Yes, the knowledge of God. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I would say the mitzvot are, this higher knowledge, ways of doing life. Societal life built on these commands that become the current of God. And God life is going to emerge from a society arranged around this construct.
And interesting, I just looked ahead, 2 Corinthians 11 verse 4, we're talking about another Yeshua by the time we get to there, and a different good news, a different spirit, it says. You know, the text links it, that kind of the verse before, it's with the voice of the serpent. It's telling you a different truth about yourself, teaching you a grasping for life that actually is going to become death.
Yeah, so subtle. And instead of Messiah, yeah, it might even look more inviting, but it's a lie. The 7 nations are a life that is a lie. And we'll look at these 7 nations in detail. We're going to have another recording to do this with. And we're going to see them as a kind of psychological journey, taking down the lies within us, that's all real lies within us, and returning us to life. And Deuteronomy 7 verse 3, don't intermarry with them. They're going to turn your son away. You're going to lose the next generation. Tear them down. Show no mercy. Make no covenant with them. You know, their ways to live are not life. Their ways to live are a lie, no matter how lifey they look.
Yeah, we need to do both, don't we? We need chapter 6 and chapter 7. We need to form the mitzvot, the plural, the lifestyle that's going to become that one mitzvah, that's a multi-generational trajectory can start happening within. When your son asks, what is this life we're living? Taking them back to the root in Egypt and God who took them out of Egypt. I think that's maybe talking into the wisdom of the root there. And then chapter 7 to take down these lies that become apparent as you grow the life of God, individually, communally. When the lie becomes seen through the work of God in your life, as God grows within your psychology, it becomes quite obvious what is not life.
Yeah, and that's where we need Torah, because Torah reads us. It tells us what to do, but as it tells us what to do, it also tells us what to take down as well. And I don't know if you've had that experience when you read the words, when you study the words, when you really get into them and chew on them and have a conversation about them, you start to see what is a lie in you. As you align yourself to the truth of that, you then get wisdom as to how to take down the lie. And it's not very comfortable. Sometimes we don't want to let go of these things, but the way of the cross is to die in order to resurrect into the Messiah that we ultimately are going to look like. That Adam that can take on the weight, the full weight of the life of God within our mortal beings, we need to die first. And that's what taking down the 7 nations looks like.
We were designed to live a certain way. We were designed to work, to operate a certain way as human beings. And ultimately, we were designed to live in community. So if you're not part of a community, you may feel like it's life, but the truth is it's not. And extrapolate that a little bit further. Start operating within a life where you are extracting, you are exploiting, you are accumulating. It may feel like life, but the truth is, according to your design, it's not. And you'll need more, and you'll need more, and you'll need more, and you'll never be satisfied.
It reminds me of addiction, actually. The same thing. It may feel like life when you're taking that drug, whatever it is, but then the experience finishes and you kind of enter a low and you need more of it, and then you need more of it. I'm thinking of the fentanyl crisis in America. It feels like life. Well, life is, the feeling of life is happening within you, but by definition, it's not life. If you're a zombie, it's not how you're designed to operate, and it becomes death progressively within you. The commandments are the way we were designed, even if we don't understand the commandments, even if we don't like doing them. It's restricting us. It's making us into different. It's making us into holy, sometimes weird, sometimes railed against, peculiar. But then the other side of it is these nations of life with their gods, with their ways of doing community. It may feel very alive to dance around an Asherah pole and sleep with the prostitutes there and do the rituals and think of God in the way that they think of their God, appeasing spiritual entities to give us rain, to give us prosperity, to give us fertility and offspring. But that is definitively not life, according to the design that human beings were designed to live. And I think that's where the Torah is not complicated. All it's trying to do is to, in a very wise, higher dimensional way, align humanity to be able to live the life they were designed to live. I hope I'm getting that across.
Yeah, I think that absolutely, really. Well, for me, it's completely opened my eyes. Yeah, that's the dynamic we're talking about here. It's really, really useful to hear.
So the wisdom of the root, I just want to come back to that. There's wisdom in the root that is going to adjust to what it finds happening above. And I see this kind of multi-generational aspect to passing on. You're not just passing something static, you're passing something that is living, intelligent. It's making actually time travel possible. It's giving life to the transition of time. Do you know what I'm getting at here?
I'm just thinking in terms of it's useful to keep within the root story. We're saying roots are ancestors, roots are people who've died. But the way you cause those ancestors who are no longer living, breathing, being able to give us wisdom is Deuteronomy 6 and 7.
Within that interaction with your son in Deuteronomy 6, a really key pivotal moment that becomes the mitzvah, the one mitzvah. If you don't get that question, then all you're doing is a multiplicity of mitzvot that aren't reflecting the oneness that the God who spoke those mitzvot into being resonates with. And it's interesting. It's like when all the laws are being adhered to, you experience a oneness of life. It's like the laws disappear and just life emerges, a society, a city. I was in London yesterday and I don't notice the sewer systems. I don't notice the electrics. I don't notice even the transportation system, even though sometimes you do when it's late. I'm not questioning the rail that this train is going along. That infrastructure is laid down and it's gone into the back of our consciousness so that we can experience life. I had a great time walking the streets of London yesterday. You know, the beer, the food, it's all been manufactured. I can have a glass of beer in my hand. I'm not thinking about that. I'm enjoying a moment with my friend, experiencing an environment that's already built around me. And that's I think, what we're talking about, really. That's how the history can become life multigenerationally. But then we're talking about the taking down and the 7 lying factions of life reality within the land. I hope you can get what I'm talking about.
Yeah, really, really useful to see this as an image. And I think coming back to the root and knowing that the root has intelligence and then linking it with this multigenerational aspect of things, it does breathe life into the ancestors. So Moses, so Abraham, so Isaac, Jacob, they are speaking still. They're still alive through the medium of the mitzvah. In a way, their essence, their character, the learning that they want to pass on is
burnt to tape broadcasting, we would say.
Oh, burnt to tape. Okay. I was going to say maybe burnt to CD or something. Like, yeah, okay. We don't have CDs anymore.
We don't have tapes anymore.
So just to see that you have a video on an audio file, a memory, but it's more than that, isn't it? It's a living, breathing entity of the ancestors, the wisdom of the ancestors.
Yeah, and that's it. Do we realise when we are living the mitzvot and our sons are asking us questions like that, do we realise that we're actually resurrecting the life of the deep wisdom of the roots into which we are grafted? And that's just incredible. That I think that's a picture of Yeshua, really. How he is multigenerationally passing on the wisdom of the fathers through his spirit within us, because spirit is just life force, and the life force of someone who has become a human being and lived these out according to the design for which the scaffolding was built. So the root system is intelligent. The root system, even though it's the ancestors, even though it's Israel in times past and they have a journey, they have a story, that story becomes your story, and that story actually has intelligence to it. It responds to your particular situation. I think if we know that when we read the Torah, when we read the Bible, that it is seeking to bring its intelligence to your situation and root you in terms of where it senses you're at. And this is where the text can read you. Have you ever thought of it in terms of reading a text of the Bible, asking questions in a Socratic way, trying to bring it to your life? We're getting intelligence from the scriptures, but have you ever thought of the scriptures drawing intelligence from you, from your reality as you read it? And that is, I think, the flow of the Spirit within the reading of the text there, the breath of life, the breath of God, who is beyond the text, just as he's beyond time and space. He's doing a work as you interact with these words that are aligned within the scaffolding pattern of that which God is making. So this is why I think the scriptures that we have in our hand, we call the Bible, it's everything we need, like a hologram. You don't have to have the full image, but it's going to give the image nevertheless. And I think that's the scriptures we have are divinely chosen, even though they are chosen with intent. And even if there is malicious intent in leaving certain things out or adding little bits here and there, it's detuning the picture, but the picture's still going to survive like a hologram. So it's like, don't chill out a bit. And the main thing is to read the scriptures with an awareness of the Spirit breathing life into what you're reading. And that's...
But I was just thinking, a friend of mine said that when they read the scriptures with the Spirit breathing over the scriptures, it's like some of them become almost three-dimensional. They see certain things jump out and actually speak directly to their situation as they read it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same as my situation with my dad. He was saying that he had a transformative moment when the scriptures he saw them as literally like that, jump out on the page. That's actually a few people have told me that. They literally looks 3D, like those stereograms. And it's just this verse jumps out at you and just completely wrecks your life and rebuilds it. It's just an amazing, amazing experience when the Spirit breathes over the words. Because those words, yeah, they are within the grain of God's intention, God's character, God's growth model. And yeah, within the grain means creating a life that is actually working and taking down the lives that think they're alive, but they're really contortions and they are quick fixes and not living the life that God wants for you. So that's, I think, where we need to stop because we are at an end point here. That's been really interesting from the walk round the lake, seeing the willow tree this morning. And I did ask the question, actually, Psalm 1, is that the tree? But interestingly, no, it's not the tree. They think the willow is mentioned in the Bible, but more likely it's the palm tree that's mentioned in Psalm 1, which is an interesting one because the palm tree, tamar, the Hebrew word, speaks of a society that's working amazingly well. As we've said before, is this kind of picture of the fruit in the middle of the tree and these branches going out in such a way that it represents a centre of community that is really abundant and fruitful. It's such a beautiful picture of a community, a city that works, a society that really, really works well. And that's what God wants to build at the end of the day, because that's really what all politicians want. That's when we vote, that's what we want, isn't it?
Yeah, that brings it very practical, doesn't it?
It's not complicated. It's not super spiritual up there in the clouds. But sometimes we need to realise that the only way we're going to do this is to get the wisdom from the super spiritual up there in the clouds.
Yeah, to bring it down, yeah. That's really absolutely very important to remember there.
There we go. That's Deuteronomy 6 and 7, the wisdom of intergenerational living, aliveness of the root that is intelligent and will move according to what the branches are doing above ground, and is safe to grow tall, high, no matter what's happened in your life, whether you've had a big fall, whether you've been in exile, whether you've experienced massive loss and you think it's not safe to grow again. Give it a go. There's wisdom in the root.